What's up, narrators? This is Mo, and I'm back with the Narratives Per Possession podcast. We are here to connect you to better basketball narratives. And before I get into the festivities for this evening, please make sure that you like, subscribe, and leave a comment on this video to help our channel continue to grow. I'm excited for our guest tonight because he is going to help us dive into one of the more notable teams in the NBA right now, the Houston Rockets. He provides credentialed reporting for Rockets on SI. Let me make sure I get that right. Old man brain, don't fail me now. Yes, Rockets on SI. He's providing credentialed reporting for them. And he's also the host of the Rocket Fuel podcast. It's a great podcast. And I do encourage you to subscribe to Rocket Fuel on YouTube as well. And without further ado, let me bring to the stage Mr. Lachard Binkley. Welcome, Lachard. Thank you.
Absolutely. It's good to be talking with you, talk some real basketball. Always up for that.
Absolutely. That's what, I mean, this is still a channel that's in its infancy, a podcast is in its infancy. And that's our aim here is talk about real basketball on a basketball show. So how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. I can't complain. It's good to finally watch the Rockets win last night. So I guess we'll kind of see how they do the rest of this week. But finally got off that over slide there. So it's good. Good time to talk Rockets.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I definitely want to up top, sort of recap these first three games and kind of I think we can work our way backwards from last night because I've watched all three of the games live, and I do see some emerging trends, some emerging themes in this Rockets roster that I'd love to dive into with you. And you mentioned, so last night, we'll work our way backwards. So last night, Monday night, Rockets faced the Brooklyn Nets, and to be honest, we said this before we started. I mean, the Nets have been kind of feisty, actually. So one would assume this would have been a easy go for the Rockets, and for the most part, it was. But I just don't, I don't want to sell the Nets short because they have been playing some inspired basketball start out the season. But Houston, they faced the Rockets, and what they looking at the score here.
Yeah, I think it's 137 and 109. Yeah.
Got their first win, 137-109. Yeah. And I think the thing, just like the first theme in general, certainly there's some elements to it in this game, but even in the first two games as well, the biggest theme by far I notice when I see the Rockets play is it's an offense that is just, I see a lot of dribbling and I see a lot of plotting possessions. There isn't a lot of speed, and then at the same time, the ball is constantly pounding the court. And I'll add this one stat just to set the context there. One of the things that I found that was interesting when I went out to NBA.com, through these first three games, the Rockets, 75.4% of their shot attempts are happening when it's 15 seconds or less left on the shot clock. And so it's just that's a tough life to live, honestly, when you're using that much of the clock. And thankfully, they're facing the Nets, who, in terms of defense, aren't as stout as perhaps the Pistons or certainly the world champ OKC Thunder. So what did you see that was different in this game last night versus the first two games, where, I mean, given how much they sort of, again, pound the rock, like, how were they able to sort of make some adjustments to finally get over the hump and get this first win?
I mean, like you mentioned, kind of first, it starts with, I mean, they were playing Brooklyn. Brooklyn was coming off of stay on the second night of a back-to-back. They had just played San Antonio the night before. It was a tough game. I think they were down by like 28 points, came all the way back and took the lead. So, anytime a team has to come that far back to take the lead in a game, that they're going to be, tired, especially at the end of that game. You saw they kind of fell off in overtime, and then they have to play the next night, travel to Houston, play a Rockets team that hadn't played since Friday. So first and foremost, that had a lot to do with them. I mean, if we're just being perfectly honest, but also the Rockets changed their starting lineup. They went with Josh Okogie in the starting lineup instead of Steven Adams. And that first two games, they went with the the jumbo lineup where they had, of course, Steven Adams, Alfred Şengün, Jabari, KD was playing shooting guard, and then they had Amen at point guard. So they were pretty much bound to have a really slow pace. They were actually last in pace coming into last night's game in the NBA, and a lot of that had to do with the starting lineup. And that's one of the things that Emma talked about before the game is they wanted to kind of change the pace that they were running at, and they also wanted to change their defensive intensity as well. And that's why they put Josh into that starting lineup. And you kind of saw them kind of push the pace a little bit more last night. I mean, they didn't have a ton of fast break points, but it still had been better than the previous two games. And then also they wanted to get the ball in Amen Thompson's hand more, have him push the ball up the court because he's one of the few people in that starting lineup that can actually push the ball up the court and actually get by his defender on a regular basis. So we saw a little bit of that last night. I know that's something they want to kind of continue going into their next game against Toronto tomorrow.
Sure. Yeah, and I thought that was a good adjustment. Yeah, putting Okogie in the starting lineup, and you saw a little bit more of a balanced roster, honestly. To some of the things you mentioned, right? Okogie certainly in the half court, I thought it was a breath of fresh air compared to those first two Rockets games, where he's able to do some cutting, not hesitating at all on the catch and shoot like opportunities when he has them. So he's letting the ball fly, and it just seems like that, that's a necessary, it just needs that different element or that different ingredient in the starting lineup right now when you don't have Fred VanVleet, and we'll get into Fred later. But yeah, I thought that was a good adjustment. And one of the things that actually caught my eye in that first half of Monday's game against Brooklyn Nets as well, towards the end of the second quarter, the first half, there was it was a lineup that Ime put out there that I thought, while not super impactful in terms of the box score, at least it seems like the coaching staff is trying to figure out this balance of having some level of pace or athleticism on the floor. And it was a lineup of Josh Okogie, Amen Thompson, Tari Eason, Jabari Smith Jr., then Şengün. So they finished out pretty much the tail end of that second quarter. And I think they subbed in KD for like a possession or so. But the thing that I thought that seems like the beginning of a lineup that could potentially be more of a push the pace type offensive attack. And for what it's worth, I mean, they were +1 in 2.5 minutes. Is that a viable path for at least injecting some level of pace into this roster, or are there other lines that you think the Rockets should consider just to try to get more movement and just athleticism on the court?
Yeah, I mean, definitely that lineup because you're like you said, have a little bit more speed, a little bit more athleticism with Jabari at the power forward, and then of course with Tari, who's one of the more athletic players on their team that comes off the bench. Another lineup that MA's talked about before that we haven't seen a lot is also Kevin Durant at center with Jabari at power forward, kind of give you the full out space. And even though Alfred Şengün is probably shooting the best he has from 3-point range to start the season, he had 2 more last night after having 5 in that first game, something that we haven't seen from Şengün his entire career. But they have talked about Kevin Durant playing that center position at times to kind of give you more spacing and give you more people that can handle the ball out at the top of the key. But they're still really experimenting with a lot of these lineups. And I think it's also going to change when Dorian Finney-Smith is ready to play. He hasn't really had any full contact practices yet, so he's still a little bit away from actually getting on the court. But once he gets there, that's more of a flexible wing lineup that they can throw out there because we all know Ime loves his wing players. He likes to have them out on the court. So that's going to be another player that should help with the athleticism, help with them getting up and down the court. But yeah, like you said, the lineup they had at the end of the first half, putting Kevin Durant at the center position as well. They want to see more from Reed, even though his game isn't necessarily as being a super athletic type of player, but he's still somebody that can get up and down the court and can at times handle the ball. He's slowly getting better with that. Still a guy in work in progress, but yeah, they're still experimenting with a lot of different lineups. We may see a different lineup tomorrow. They may start Tari Eason against Toronto. Even though if I had to guess, they'd probably let Okogie start again at shooting guard just because he played as well as he did. So, but overall, it's still a work in progress. They're still trying to figure things out. They're still trying to figure out what they want to do as far as once they get closer to December, when they can start, trading some of these players that they sign in the offseason, that's going to be like a whole nother story. But for now, yeah, they're still trying to kind of figure out what lineups work at, what time.
Yeah. And certainly, I mean, no team wants to start off 0-2,
Yeah.
but I mean, those were tight. I mean, those were tight losses. I mean,
Yeah.
not that anybody's in the moral victories either. But that certainly is a somewhat of a luxury to have, where at least, I mean, there's some options to consider. It's not like they're stuck in the water with like,
Yeah.
this jumbo lineup is all we got, and so we're just gonna have to figure that out. But it's good to see some of that evolution. And I mean, on the subject of Tari Eason as well, I mean, he had a monster first half last night, also, right? And I don't know if it's an interesting dynamic, right? Because I mean, Tari's going into his last year of his contract. He didn't get extended. Certainly want to like get your thoughts on like just where you might project his RFA going into next summer. But it felt like Tari really earned himself a lot more run versus like what I saw from him in those first two games, just from just how high of a shot he was hitting.
Yeah, and the thing about it, Ime really loves Tari. He loves what he brings. He doesn't even really care if he's missing shots, as long as they come with the flow of the offense. It's really about him. It's about not turning the ball over, not kind of overplaying what he needs to do out on the court, something he was doing in those first two games. Like I said, as far as his shot, of course, he would love if he makes 5 3-pointers every game, which was a career high for him. But overall, for Tari, it's more about playing under control, not turning the ball over. And if he does that, then he'll get plenty of time on the court. Like I say, Ime loves what he brings to the game. We saw last night where he had those 20 points in the first half that really helped propel the Rockets to that lead, and eventually to the point where none of the starters even had to play the fourth quarter. That's how much of a lead they had in that game. But yeah, just overall, if Tari can just make a couple of shots, not turn the ball over, he's going to always bring energy, and he's always going to bring defense. So those two things you can always count on with Tari. And for a team that doesn't have Dorian Finney-Smith for however long it's going to be, they're still going to need Tari Eason to kind of provide that spark. Because again, of course, we know they traded away Dylan Brooks, they traded away Cam Whitmore. So he's pretty much the only other wing that they're going to play on a regular basis, especially with Josh Okogie playing more of a shooting guard position, and Amen, being the point guard now.
Yeah, you can see where Tari may, I mean, give at least for this runway where Okogie's starting, Tari's really cementing himself as the bona fide six man on this roster at this point. Yeah. And Reed Sheppard, he stuck out to me certainly in this game, but this is also a good segue going now back into that second game, the game versus the Pistons.
Yeah.
I'm curious what you think about Reed so far in these 3 games. Not so much from his offense, because that's still a work in progress, but I see, just me personally outside looking in, I think Reed Sheppard may potentially be underappreciated for what defensive impact he can deliver. And the thing I'll point to in that Pistons game, he actually led the team in deflections. He had 8 deflections in that game, and that carried over into Monday's game against Brooklyn as well, where he has like good instincts in gap defense as a help defender, being able to anticipate where the ball is moving and get his good active hands, get into those lanes and force those turnovers. And I noticed that you were able to talk with him post game about that, right?
Yeah, actually, I asked him about that because that's the one thing I've noticed about him more than anything is his anticipation on those, on those steals, being able to get in the passing lane, like you said, being able to break up, offensive sets. And I asked him, like, is that something that's come to you naturally? Is that something you work on? And he was saying, yeah, it's something he works on more about knowing when to do it and when not to do it. Because you can overplay and then you can be out of position. And that's something that probably drives him more crazy more than anything else if you make mistakes on the defensive end more than the offensive end. So he said he's just trying to, basically balance when he does try to do that and when he doesn't, because in one play where he completely stripped the ball from one of the Brooklyn Nets and took it down for a dunk. It was another one where he almost got a steal, but then he kind of got out of position a little bit. So that's something that he's going to have to balance on when to be able to try to go for those steals and when not to go for the steal. Because at the end of the day, His biggest problem on defense is really when it's one-on-one, when he's right in front of the offensive player and trying to keep him in front of, because like we haven't talked about it yet, but when Oklahoma City game was kind of a perfect example where they were kind of just going at him every time he came into the game. But his main thing is, especially with the one-on-one defense, is being able to beat them to the position or beat them to their spot, because he's not necessarily like, of course, he's not Amen Thompson, where even when Amen Thompson gets beat, he can still recover and get a block without barely even breaking a sweat. That's not really his type of defensive game. But his anticipation, he probably has some of the best, hands on the entire team when it comes to breaking up those passes or jumping in the passing lane.
Yeah, actually, I want to bring that. I have that clip up. I want to bring that up and watch that with you, because it's something that I think the league should take a bit more notice when talking
Yeah,
about him, because I mean, there's just different types of attributes and impact between the on-ball defender and the help defender.
yeah,
And to your point, right? Like Reed just may not be there quite yet, or maybe there's a ceiling that he will always have as an on-ball defender, but certainly as a help defender, that pops to me. And let's
yeah.
see if this should be the. Let me go. Not this one. Oh no, that is it. Yep, we got that. Yeah, so just being active and just that I mean, I just thought that was an amazing effort from
Yeah.
Reed defensively, where you know went under the screen but still like had the footwork to keep himself in the play
Yeah.
and find a way to get that ball. That was just I thought noteworthy defense on his part.
Yeah, and just overall, his basketball IQ, of course, extremely high. His whole family played basketball. His mom was mom and dad were two of the best basketball players in the entire state of Kentucky. Um, so he has the basketball IQ already. So he already knows, what he needs to do on the court. It's just a matter of him adjusting to the speed of the NBA. And once he gets to that point and finds his exact role where he can fit the best, I think that you'll really see a much better version of Reed overall.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing that stood out to me honestly in that second game, so the Rockets and the Pistons game,
Yeah,
I really would love to see more of a KD Alperen Şengün two-man game, because there's not a
yeah,
lot of it, and that hopefully is another adjustment that maybe Ime might have in the works. I mean, when they're in the action together, that becomes a very difficult combination for any defense to cover, and it
yeah.
seems like so far it hasn't worked out that way. Maybe some spacing considerations. I don't know. Have you had any like conversations about that with, say, like Ime or either KD or Alpi about like how might they actually get more two-man together going?
And I think it had a lot to do with that double big lineup. It's kind of hard to run in as much because teams aren't necessary, because either Steven Adams is going to be at the top of the key, where they're not necessarily going to guard him, or he's going to be in the paint. So it's kind of hard to run that pick and roll when he's in the paint. They actually ran it quite a bit in that second preseason game, where they did start a traditional lineup. And I remember I actually asked KD about how difficult is it for teams to have you and Alperen Şengün on one side of the court. And he basically said that, yeah, it's extremely difficult because if they double team, they can't double team both of us at the same time. And so if they double team one or the other, it's going to leave one of us going one on one. And yeah, you're right. We haven't seen it as much. And I think it had more to do with them starting that double big line. Also, um, like you said, OKC and Detroit are two of the best defensive teams in the league. They definitely were last season. And I wouldn't, expect it to be any different this year. So that's why I took some of those results with a grain of salt in the first two games, just because they were playing two of the best defensive teams in the league, and they play extremely physical. So it's only so much you can really take for them from those two games as far as, well, the Rockets need to do this better, need to do that. But I think starting a more traditional line, they'll be able to run that pick and roll a lot more. And I agree, because I mean, to me, that's probably one of their best offensive plays, because you can't guard both guys. And then if you have Josh Okogie, if he can just continue to shoot average from 3-point range, that's going to be a kind of a huge development, for them overall to be able to kind of run more plays with, their two best offensive players.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, even then taking a step back, I mean, the very first game against the Oklahoma City Thunder, I mean, Alperen Sengun was absolutely dominant. There's no question. And so that's something I suppose I have a question as well, open question really for like the trajectory of this Rockets team. To touch on the theme is really the evolution of Alperen Sengun this year, his usage and how he might be featured in a variety of sets or a variety of looks with this offense. I don't. The point where I want to go with this, I'd see that there being matchups where Alpy should absolutely be a dominant me first person on ball.
Yeah.
There are other matchups where it may not be in his best interest or the team's best interest for him to be as on ball or dominant or to assert himself in ways like that. And what I mean by that is it seems like, we talked about up front, like, the amount of time that the Rockets are spending in the shot clock with their offensive possessions. There seems like there's still a sort of a discernment that Sengun would benefit from developing, where like he needs to understand like when he needs to move the rock versus like this is my matchup, this is my take, or this is my cross match to exploit.
Yeah, and you saw that a lot more during Eurobasket, where he was kind of, he wasn't hesitating. He was taking it directly to the basket. I also think it's still and it's still kind of a something he's trying to learn as far as teams double teaming him, where the double team is coming from, when he should still be aggressive, even with a double team. We saw Brooklyn try that last night where they were trying to get the ball out of his hands as much as possible. And he's definitely a willing passer, but sometimes he just kind of has to take it to the basket, especially when he's going against a team that has a smaller front court. Even with the double team, sometimes it does pay for him to be more aggressive. But at the same time, sometimes he can be kind of forced to action a little bit too much. And kind of going back to that Pistons game, that's something that happened in that game where he only shot for like 6 for 17 from the field because he was a little bit too aggressive trying to score 2 or 3 defenders, and they have a lot of tough defenders with Detroit. And we kind of saw the opposite of that with Oklahoma City, where it helped a lot that he was able to make the 3-point shot because they were backing off him like most teams do. And when he's able to make that shot, if he's able to start making that consistently, that kind of just opened up the entire offense because teams still right now kind of just back off of him. They wait for him to come to the paint so that they can either double team him or, like you said, it's usually late in the shot clock or force him to take a bad shot. So I think overall, if he can get to the point where he's making more of those 3-point shots, that's going to be huge for him overall because then teams will have to adjust to him. And we see that he can pretty much drive by any big man in the NBA. He has good enough handles to where if a big man's going to come out and guard him at the 3-point line, majority of the time he's able to go by him. So it's kind of a balance in that because he's just so used to being a type of player where he's looking to make the pass, looking to get it to the open guy, but sometimes he has to be more aggressive. He has to, when he has that matchup, not wait for the double team, just go straight to the basket.
Yeah, and so I have another clip. Actually, I think it touches on so many things you just mentioned. That I think this possession. This was one that stuck out to me, but there are others where like I look at this and this is the theme that I think through the first 3 games that is stuck out in my head about the Houston Rockets is you see like Sengun, he gets the ball right out of a pick and pop. I question, just immediately reacting to this, like why not just pull it? Like just pull up. You got the space. You could try to take Tobias Harris to the rim. Tobias, I think he got maligned a lot when he was with the Sixers. But for the most part, Tobias Harris is a reliable defender. It's like that's not going to be a straight ahead. Like I don't know if you're going to always win that matchup trying to take him to the rack. You got to pull up there. And one thing that I mentioned, or I tweeted this during the first game, especially about the jumbo lineup. There's an obvious trade-off of you don't have the ball handling you don't have Fred VanVleet right now.
Yeah.
It just seems like anything that the Rockets could do right now to where they can just get the shot up quicker, get the shot up, and trust Steven Adams to crash glass. Because I mean, the offensive rebound is there. There's no concern about that.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing I question is like, why not get the shot up sooner?
Yeah, and also I think they still trying to figure out the offense because when you put in somebody like KD, as great as he is, you still have to figure out where he wants the basketball, how does he want it, what spot on the floor, and he's still trying to get used to his teammates. And especially in that first half of the first game, he was really hesitant, so he was trying to figure it out. So it's still a lot of unknown, especially, I mean, like you said, they were expecting Fred VanVleet to be here, and that changes pretty much the entire offense as far as who's bringing up the ball, who's handling it most of the time. So now you don't have that. You're trying to figure that out on the fly. Ahmed hasn't played point guard since he came into the NBA, so he's trying to figure out that position. He was getting used to just being on the wing, being able to crash and be in a dunker spot. But now he's having to, bring the ball up and try to initiate offense and also try to, get his own shot up. So it's a lot of moving parts right now. And I think that was kind of the biggest thing why sometimes it'll be 10 seconds left in the shot clock and they're just getting into their offense. And like I said, the pace numbers that I talked about earlier, that kind of just represents that to the fullest, is that they just weren't really getting up the court that fast. They did it a lot better last night, like I said, where Ahmed Thompson was really pushing the pace. And there's nobody in the NBA can stay in front of Ahmed. So when he's aggressive and he's bringing the ball up the court, to me, that's the much better offense than having to worry about Şengün or Kevin Durant having to constantly bring the ball up, when they're 6'10", 6'11", having to worry about being facilitators.
Yeah, and it's tough because, I mean, this is an emerging trend across the league. I think largely in part because of what people saw with the Pacers making that run to the finals last season. The pickup points are like getting so much more aggressive this season, where teams are pressing 94 feet or doing the 3-quarter, right? So I would imagine, defense is seeing like Şengün or KD bringing the ball up. That's an automatic press, just because, like, I mean, you play the odds on that basically. If you get them like pressed or able to just slow them down, like then the shot clock's in your favor.
Yeah, and especially with Şengün, as good as Şengün is as a ball handler, it's asking him a lot to bring the ball up 94 feet. Durant's a little bit different because Durant can still get by people and he can pull up from anywhere. So if you continuously try to press him, that's going to make it a little bit more difficult on you. But at the same time, again, Durant's 37 years old. You don't want him to be bringing up the ball every time down the court, having to go up against full court defense. Luckily, Brooklyn really didn't have anybody that can guard. Get Cam Johnson. They tried to put him on KD. That didn't necessarily work out well. Then eventually they try to double team him. So, but just overall, when you're going up against a team like Oklahoma City or Detroit or, the better defensive teams in the league, that's when the ball handling becomes an issue. And that's when they're going to figure out some things. And that's where Ahmed Thompson just going to have to get better because, I mean, him, Reed, Aaron Holiday hasn't even played yet in the regular season. He's probably about the only other regular ball handler that they have on the team. So, I mean, that's going to be a big concern kind of all year, or at least until December when they can, start to possibly make some moves. But right now, they're just trying to piece it together and just win as many games as they can right now until they can actually start to maybe make some roster changes.
Yeah, I see it, and they definitely they just kind of have to hold down the fort as best they can. Yeah. I guess so. The other question that popped into my head, going back to that clip where Şengün tries to take Tobias Harris off the dribble. Obviously, like, why not just shoot the ball sooner? But I think there's a bigger picture question I at least ask, and like I'd be curious what you think about this. For the interim, what type of ball handler do the Houston Rockets need Alperen Şengün to be for the benefit of the team? Because like you just mentioned, I don't know if it's necessarily like Alpi initiates the offense. It seems like that, that's got to be like a gadget kind of almost look, where it's like when the matchup dictates it, sure, but like it just doesn't seem like they should be going to that all that much going forward.
Well, I would say they don't need to be doing it every single time. They do like Alpern at the top of the key, kind of starting the offense. I just don't think you need him to be bringing the ball up, especially against pressure. But having him at the top of the key, he always makes really good decisions. And it's to me, it's better than having him on the post on the left block or the right block because it's way easier to double team him when he's on the block like that. When he's at the top of the key, he can kind of see the entire court. And I think honestly, that's something that they're pushing right now is having him be their main facilitator. Because, like again, of course, Eurobasket is not the NBA, but we saw that a lot in Eurobasket where he was the prime, facilitator. We've seen it throughout his career, a lot less since Fred VanVleet came to the team, but we're starting to see it a little bit more now. In the preseason, he had a 13 assist game. I mean, he can definitely do it. It's just I think it's a lot easier for them when that double big lineup is not the primary lineup they're using. It's nothing wrong with using it throughout the game, but I think starting off with it every single game, you definitely don't want to do that. And I think it's going to be more matchup based going forward. Like if they're playing a team like Oklahoma City that had two bigs, or a team like I don't know, like Minnesota or somebody like that may have two guys um, that are like their primary focus on the inside. That's when you might see the Rockets kind of run with that double big lineup. But I just think that the more traditional line will work better, at least as far as them pushing the pace, as far as the way they run their offense. Because I know they said their best offense last year was offensive rebounding, but that can only get you so far. We saw in the playoffs what kind of happened with that they had success, but they still weren't able to score enough to beat Golden State. And that's exactly why they went out and got Kevin Durant.
Yeah. Yeah, those are the 2 points you make. I think that will be interesting and something to monitor in terms of just Şengün's spacing in terms of like when he's on ball, because to your point, I noticed that too. Like he does post up quite a bit, and I'm sure like I had the day that I was looking at the numbers, the touch numbers for Houston. I won't cite specifically, but if you look at Houston's touch data at this point, the post ups are by far the most between post ups, elbow touches, and then paint touches. Like it's the post, and it's challenging if you're going to post up a big. Typically, there should be some there has to be something on in my opinion at least, there has to be something on the opposite side or the weak side, right? Where there's some cutting coming in from there, and they're just not, that's really not going to happen in a jumbo lineup, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So the point you're making about start Şengün at the top of the key, that probably is a better setup. I mean, it's something that you see Isaiah Hartenstein, run that to perfection as a big, and he makes incredible plays out of that. It's hopefully that might be a tweak that Ime gives Şengün in these next couple of games.
Yeah, real quick on OKC, and the reason why they're successful at doing that because Chet can spread the floor, and that's why they're able to run that double big lineup every single game because they can have that spacing with those two big guys. With the Rockets, yes, Şengün's got better, but that's not really his game, is to be out being a stretch four, taking 4 or 5 threes a game. So that's why that double big lineup is, in, like I said, in certain spots is great. They even did it again last night. They ran it throughout the game at points, but that also limits them on the defensive end. That's something that MA brought up pregame is they want to see more from their defense, more variety, and they really can't do that with a double big because the majority of the time they have to run the zone, which they've gotten better at. But as you know, in the NBA, you can't run zone 48 minutes a game. Teams are eventually going to pick that apart. So that's why I think that the double big lineup will be used. It's just I don't see them as they're starting it 2 or 3 times out of 3 or 4 games. I think it's going to be used a little bit more sparingly, throughohout the season.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, I actually am a fan of that jumbo double big lineup. There's utility in it for sure. At the same time, like I kind of look at it like it's like a design problem, or like if you're building a building, like the trade-offs that you have to make in order to make a design become a reality. And I think through those first 2 games for sure, the Rockets saw sort of the trade-off limitations of with that jumbo lineup. And I mean, I think we touched on some of those trade-offs, right? Like you're gonna have some offensive rebound, but obviously the ball handling is not there, the athleticism's not there. Perhaps there's like some defensive impact for sure you get out of it, but yeah, they're gonna have to figure out how to navigate those trade-offs and like then what is the counter when we need to get out of jumbo lineup land?
Yeah. I mean, like you said, I mean, you got to have kind of variation. And again, not having Fred, that's the kind of biggest problem with any of these lineups because if they were going to run a jumbo line with Fred, then Amen would probably be in the Jabari spot. And then Fred, I really believe that Fred was going to have a bounce back year from 3-point range. So now you're kind of taking that out of it where he's probably going to shoot 38% from 3-point range. Now you have Amen who, shot better in the preseason, but that hasn't translated to the regular season yet. So now you're kind of dealing with even less shooting. Excuse me. So that's something that they really just have to navigate for now.
Yeah, for sure. And there's some, emerging news, not specifically about Fred VanVleet and his, is obviously recovering from the injury, rehabbing from the injury, but there was some reporting from Kelly Iko from Yahoo Sports that it sounds like the Rockets are planning to file for a disabled player exemption. Assuming they do, sort of just prognosticating what sort of who would be on your short list of candidates that the Rockets should consider or at least an archetype to make use of that disabled player exemption.
Yeah, excuse me. I think if you're not a particular player, but if you're looking for somebody that consider decent percentage from 3-point range, that's a low usage guy, but that can at least initiate some type of offense. The only problem with that exception right now is that they can't really use it at this moment because they're already kind of hard. They're already at the first apron, so they're already hard capped. They can't even sign a player to a minimum deal unless they were to cut one of their eligible players, which they're probably not going to do right now. But at least in December, players that they sign during the free agency period, that's when they become eligible, like a Jeff Green, Aaron Holiday, Jayshawn Tate, players like that. That's when they can actually really use that $12 million or $12.5 million that they'll have from that exception. That's when they're really coming to play. And if you can get a guy that doesn't need a lot of shots, but that can make an outside shot on occasion, but really somebody that can be kind of the quarterback on your team, like pretty much what they call in the NFL a game manager. You don't really need somebody that's flashy. You don't need somebody that's going to go out there and score 25 points a game. The Rockets really don't need that from a point guard. They just need somebody, I don't know, like a TJ McConnell type. That's the type of player that they really could use at this point. Fred VanVleet type. I mean, that's really who they could use. And it kind of depends on, because you never know who's going to be available in December, because at that point, the Rockets can sign or trade for a player that a team that's tanking or, quote unquote tanking is trying to get rid of as far as a salary dump. That's really where I think that's going to come into play, because there's not really a lot of free agents that's on the market that they can just run out there and get. I think it's going to be somebody from another team that they want to get off of their salary. And another thing with a player exemption, you have to sign a player or trade for a player that's in the final year of the contract. So that's something else that may be a little bit of a limitation as far as using that exception. But I have to imagine Rafael already has players in mind that he's going to be looking out for around that December mark. So, yeah, I mean, that's the thing that, that they're trying to navigate now. They're trying to get to that December point, because that's when they have a lot more opportunities on. I mean, even a player like Clint Capella that they just signed, if they're not going with a double big lineup and Steven Adams is your backup center, I know Adams is not going to really be playing double or back-to-back games, so that's kind of where Clint can kind of come into it. But, I mean, pretty much I think any of those players they signed in the offseason, probably outside of Dorian Finney-Smith, could be on the table as far as players that they could possibly move to bring in somebody else. But, again, they don't even have to necessarily move anybody, but they do have to have a roster spot open to use that that hardship exemption.
I see. Yeah. So at a minimum, it sounds like the conditions might be coming together where the Rockets may be a very active player in the 26 trade deadline.
Oh yeah, for sure. As long as they file that exemption before, I think it's before like the middle of January, they can use that at any point up until the trade deadline. So yeah, that I have to imagine unless they go on some just crazy ridiculous run that I'll be pretty shocked if they don't make some type of move coming up in December or January.
Yeah. Yeah, certainly. I mean, the stakes are high. You don't go get Kevin Durant and you just kind of plod along and just stay the course. I mean, they need to do everything they can to maximize the window of having a Kevin Durant on the roster.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at this point, yes, he's just on extension. You're going to have him, for 3 years. But as great as Kevin Durant is, Father Time never loses. So eventually, his game is going to, slowly decline. So you definitely don't want to waste the window that you have right now. And I know a lot of people are saying it's championship or bust this season. I don't really see that as the case because the Rockets still have, really young players in Alperen Sengun and Amen Thompson, Jabari Smith, Tari. They still have a lot of young players that are only going to get better. So that's why I don't really see this season as if they don't win a championship, it's a disaster because I think that the players that they have right now, like an Alperen Sengun and Amen Thompson, are only going to get better. But you definitely don't want to wait 2 or 3 years down the line and you still haven't even got past the first or second round. Then that's when you're definitely going to start to run into some problems.
Yeah, and that's usually when, at bare minimum, the fan base will usually be like, "Hey, it's time to blow this up" or something to that extent. But that creates a good segue here. So, perhaps the young players taking the step up. We're seeing that with Sengun, where I personally think, like all NBA is very much within his line of sight. And then also Amen Thompson. The interesting story before the season got started, though, was again we talked about Tari Eason. So Tari Eason, extension eligible. Rockets and Eason's camp weren't able to come to agreement, so he's going to go to restricted free agency. If you had to take a guess, like how do you see that dynamic playing out? Because some of it, I mean, because we had the long saga this past summer with those 4 restricted free agents, it seems like a good amount of it comes down to the market, obviously, but then also perhaps just the dynamics between the player and the front office.
Yeah, I mean, we even saw it with, we were talking about Brooklyn with Cam Thomas. We saw how that kind of played out with him.
Yeah.
And also you have to factor in the CBA. I mean, that's the biggest reason for any of this, why a lot of these free agents had a hard time getting any type of deal. And for Tari Eason, I mean, it's a big gamble because, I mean, you could be great and still not get the money that you're looking for just because nobody has money to offer you, or they're trying to hold off, or they don't want to go anywhere near that first tax apron. Or the luxury tax. So that's a big gamble for him. And at the same time, most players are going to want to bet on themselves, and that's exactly what Tari Eason did. And I never will criticize a player for wanting to bet on themselves and want to get an even better contract because at the end of the day, I mean, you only get so many contracts in the NBA. Some players don't even get to that first big contract. So when you have a chance to make more money, you're definitely going to go for it. But it's kind of hard to say what's going to happen. If he goes out there and he has a great season, it's not even a guarantee that he can get a big deal from another team. And if he does get a big deal from another team, will Rockets even want to match that offer, considering that you have Dorian Finney-Smith? If Fred VanVleet comes back, Amen Thompson is going back to playing the wing position. So that's another wing that you're talking about. And who knows what's going to happen between now and the trade deadline. So it's definitely a gamble for Tari. I mean, if I had to just guess right now, I would say he's back just because of what we just talked about, how hard it is for players to get any type of decent deal, unless you're like a superstar level type of player. But if you're more of a middle of the road, up and coming type player like Tari Eason, it's definitely a lot harder to get a deal done now than it was before this new CBA. And I guess they can kind of thank CJ McCollum for that. But now, which is kind of funny now because Fred VanVleet is the head of the Players Association now, but they're kind of stuck with the CBA that they have right now, and that's going to kind of play a factor in when it comes down to next year. And Tari, looking to make more money than he did, of course, his previous rookie contract. So, but if I had to guess, if I just had to say one way or another, I would say that he'll be back. It may be a short-term deal. It may be like a 2-year deal with a player option or something like that. But I think the Rockets really do value what he brings. So if I just had to just make a guess on whether he's back or not, at least for right now, I would say that he'll be back with the Rockets next season.
Yeah, he's just incredibly talented. So it would be it certainly would be a big hole for him to be replaced. Especially, if the flashes of what we've seen so far, if that really sticks, it would be a head scratcher if he weren't back with the Rockets next season.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I said again, it comes down to, it's a business. The same thing for the Rockets. The Rockets offered them a certain amount. They didn't want to go over it. So, it's a possibility that they say, hey, this is the only thing we can offer you, and it's either a take or leave it. And as much as they love Tari, they also, at the end of the day, they have to do what's best for their team and their bottom line. So, like I said, it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. Or I don't see anything happening in the media where, Tari's upset and things like that. But at the end of the day, everybody wants to get paid. I don't care what job you have.
Everybody, people want to get paid. People have bills.
Yes.
So starting to look ahead this week. So Rockets are, they're getting into a road trip starting tomorrow. Wednesday night they are in Toronto, and then they travel Saturday to face the Boston Celtics. What are you expecting out of the Rockets in this upcoming road trip?
They should win both games. Honestly, if they play up to the way that they should. If they play the way they played against OKC, they should win both games pretty easily because Boston is dealing with a ton of injuries. Jaylen Brown, he's been hurt in and out of the lineup. Toronto's kind of in I don't know what you kind of really call it, because you could say rebuilding, but then they signed Brandon Ingram. So I don't know exactly what mode they're in right now. So, it's never going to be an easy game when you're going on the road against anybody. And even if Jaylen Brown is out against the Rockets when the Rockets take on Boston, they still have good players like Derek White and Peyton Pritchards and players like that. But if the Rockets play up to the way that they should be going on a 3-game winning streak going into their next home game, which will be Monday against Dallas.
Yeah, it should go that way. And the thing I feel like more and more, like, this parody era of the NBA, it's prominently on display. Austin Reeves has a 50-point game. These 50-point games are getting handed out like candy. So that's the thing.
Yeah, he had one. Lauri Markkanen had a 50-point game. So everybody's getting one at this point.
Yeah. So that's the key thing. Hopefully nobody gets like too hot. Before we head out, I do want to definitely want to just give everybody who's watching this video the opportunity just to learn a bit more about, like, how long you've been covering the Rockets, and then just how long you've also been doing your podcast, because it's great coverage, and I appreciate you being on, and the level of detail and the insight that you're giving for the Rockets. I'm sure the timing couldn't be better for like you covering this team and then starting to have this rise that they're having.
Yeah, because it's funny. I was it's kind of funny because I still am a Rockets fan, diehard Rockets fan, but I can't be at the same time. So it's kind of a weird dynamic right now. But I grew up a huge Rockets fan all the way back in the 80s. Watching basketball with my dad, Ralph Sampson, Hakeem Olajuwon. Of course, the 90s was the greatest time in Rockets history. Winning those back-to-back championships. So I've always been a diehard Rockets fan. I actually didn't grow up being a writer like a lot of people do, where they go to college and they're interns and they're just kind of their natural field. I kind of just started writing one day for a small publication back in 2019. Never thought much would come of it. I just like talking basketball, and it just kind of just led to where I am now. Being able to go out and be credentialed to cover the Rockets. I've been doing a podcast probably for the last, I would say, 2 or 3 years. I did other podcasts for other kind of entities before, but my own actual podcast, I've been doing that for the last 2 or 3 years. So, like I said, I just started writing for a little small organization, kind of worked my way up to where I am now with Rockets on SI. And it's been kind of a crazy ride because I never would have thought when I started in 2019 that I'll be, standing right next to Kevin Durant, asking him questions after watching them all them years battling the Houston Rockets with Golden State and Oklahoma City. So it's kind of a surreal moment there. But yeah, like I said, I mean, that's why I always tell anybody that's trying to get into this that it's definitely a path forward now, a lot more than, of course, it used to be back in the day where you pretty much had to be either on TV or writing for a newspaper. I mean, that was pretty much only two options. But now, if you put in the work and, of course, a bit of luck kind of plays into it. I mean, anybody can get into this business, and it's really comes down to if you love basketball. If you love basketball, you love talking basketball. I mean, there's plenty of opportunities out there. Like I said, I definitely never thought it would get as far as it has, but it's been a great ride so far.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with everything you just said, and it seems like this is a cool era in terms of, some people call it content creation or media or what have
Yeah.
you, where it's like, more and more we're seeing all these lanes being created by people who just genuinely love the game, and they find a way just to elevate themselves and like bring a unique way of talking about the game and telling stories about the game. And certainly what I'm trying to do with this platform. But one of my good buddies, I'm a Bulls fan actually, so I grew up watching the Bulls. I have a buddy, Drew Stevens. He himself, he's credentialed also, and like similar story to you actually. He started off just blogging independently and slowly worked his way up to now, like, he's on the Bulls beat. So same thing. And then, I mean, I had Caitlin Cooper here on the podcast, and just her story, of course, has been front and center, like almost like a textbook example of like, like if you truly love this game and you just put in the effort, like, you can. She interviews Rick Carlisle, so like,
I've seen her, all over the place, and like you said, it's a bunch of different stories out there. You don't just have to, go to school for 4 years, and like I said, nothing wrong with that at all. But I took a different path, kind of going to, where I was going to, and starting like really slow. I started writing and covering the G League, the Rio Grande Valley Vipers. That's kind of where I kind of got my first credential, and kind of worked my way up from there, and just kind of writing about the G League and seeing how those players are grinding. It kind of reminded me of what I was doing. So it's different lanes. And like you said, well, what you're trying to do is, talk about, real basketball, because we have enough people out here making hot takes and just trying to get, clicks and things like that. And that's something that I've always not wanted to do. I want to actually talk about real basketball. And that's why, definitely wanted to come on your show, because it's always good to actually talk, real X's and O, real basketball, and not just, this guy sucks or this guy's the GOAT, this guy's not the GOAT, like talk some actual, real day-to-day, basketball, and not just something you'll see on ESPN.
Yeah, I am staunchly anti-GOAT debate, so never will happen here. One of the funny things, actually, because I hate GOAT debate so much, when I did have Caitlin Cooper on, the joke I had with her, like, asked her to have a GOAT debate with me about corn.
That'll be a lot more interesting, probably.
It's funny, she's from Indiana. I actually am, like, coincidentally, I'm from Indiana as well, but like the northwest part of it. So that's how I ended up being a Bulls fan, because I'm closer to Chicago than Indianapolis. But it's just like I have no utility for GOAT debates, and I think there's such a wide opportunity, and I think there are people who genuinely just want to receive quality basketball content and quality basketball analysis. And thankfully, NBC's back, but like everybody doesn't have Peacock, so here we are, bro.
We're here to fill the void as much as we can.
So no, thank you. No, I appreciate you like being of like mind coming on the pod tonight, and that's
yeah.
what I'm trying to do is give people sort of like a visibility and just contribute to a wider network of people who talk real hoops.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you having me on. Like I say, anytime, throughout the season, it's definitely going to be an interesting season, not just for the Rockets, just overall. Because at this point, I really think anybody can, win a championship. Because, like I said, with the parity NBA, so anytime you want me on that, yeah, definitely let me know, and I can definitely jump on and talk some basketball for sure.
Yeah, definitely want to have you back on because I don't think the storylines for the Rockets are going to die down anytime
Oh
soon.
no.
Yeah, so
Not with Kevin Durant on the team. I don't think at all, no matter how it goes this season.
yeah. Before we get out, anything you want to plug? Anything that people should go out and read from you? Or
Definitely, like I said, I'm a journalist for Rockets on SI. I write pretty much an article a day, 30 plus articles a month. So you can always check out my work there. Of course, like you said, I'm a host of Rockets Fuel podcast on YouTube. I have, in pretty much every press conference, interviews. I do my own podcast at least once or twice a week. And also, you can check me out on Fox 26, which is a local station here in Houston. I'm usually on there once or twice a week with Nate Griffin talking Rockets. So, yeah, and of course on Twitter you can find me at Binkley Hoops. I still call it Twitter. I'm sorry. I guess I'm just a old head like that. But you can find me on Twitter, of course, as well. Like I said, at Binkley Hoops.
good stuff. Well, appreciate you. Thank you so much. And then I will
Absolutely.
say, if you like what we're doing here on this YouTube channel, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, like and comment on the video. We want to continue to grow this, but also consider joining our Patreon community because we have written content there as well. Where again, we want to connect you with better basketball narratives. So there's a lot of great content out there. And then also, I will quickly plug, also, if you like this podcast, recently launched a second podcast on the Narratives Per Possession podcast channel, which is a cool one. And Lachard, check this one out too. It's called Coach Conversations. And so this one is that one is actually an X&O podcast. And in your neck of the woods, actually, the first guest we had was Coach Chris Kreider, who was associate head coach of the Rice Owls men's basketball team.
Yeah, definitely. I've seen him. He's been around for a while. So, yeah, he definitely knows his stuff.
Yeah, so it's cool having that conversation with him. So he got on and he broke down some video of the New Orleans Pelicans because he recruited Trey Murphy to Rice back in the day. So like he has that relationship. So it's cool. And I'm hoping to get that podcast get that to a place where it's also having great guests there. So I'll plug that. And with that, thank you again, Lachard. I really appreciate having you on tonight, man. And looking forward to having you back on.
Absolutely. I had a great time. Like I said, anytime, just let me know.
All right, man. Take care.
All right, you too.